Hello everyone, Steve here, back again with another baseball themed video. Today I'm going to talk about my visit to the Clemente Museum in Pittsburgh. So let me see if I can get this on the right setting. There we go. So I recently drove to northwestern Pennsylvania to visit my mother, who is 86 years old. And in doing so, I did a bunch of little errands for her and so on. Projects for her, and it was great to see her. On the way home, I stopped in Pittsburgh and checked off a couple of my bucket list items. And as you can see here, I visited the Clemente Museum. So the Clemente Museum is located about 33 blocks east of downtown Pittsburgh. I think technically it's in an area of Pittsburgh called Lawrenceville. But in any case, downtown Pittsburgh is in clear view of this area, and you can see painted on the side of this building is an ad for the Clemente Museum. Quite a good mural that this person did, and so I showed up. It was early actually, and then I met up with a friend and we went in at the scheduled time. As with most of my videos, I have some resources that I'll make available in the description. I'm going to refer to Branch Rickey and his scouting report on Roberto Clemente. Rickey was instrumental in snatching Clemente out of the Dodger organization and bringing him to Pittsburgh. But Rickey was not always a huge fan of Clemente. There's a link here to the Clemente Museum website. And if you're going to attend, just know that you need to buy your tickets ahead of time because they have specified entrance times. They say that they actually have guided tours, but the reality is you're kind of on your own, except if you have questions, there are docents at the museum to answer questions that you may have. Feel free to speed up this video if you want. As always, you can comment or like or subscribe to my videos, and this PowerPoint will also be made available on my Google Drive. So also on the outside of the building next to the mural is a famous quote from Roberto Clemente. He says, "Anytime you have an opportunity to make a difference in the world and you don't, you are wasting your time on earth." And most of you listening here know the Clemente story, but he died trying to take humanitarian aid to Nicaragua after an earthquake, and the aid was not being delivered to the people who needed it, so he took matters into his own hands, loaded up a plane, and took off toward Nicaragua, but the plane was overloaded, crashed in the ocean, and Clemente died. And this would have been December 31, 1972, New Year's Eve, basically. So the museum itself is in an old engine house, fire engine house. Beautiful architecture of this building. And there you see the front door on the right. So we were allowed in at the designated time. One of the first things you see when you enter, besides the check-in stand, is a glass enclosed case that has effectively all of Clemente's baseball cards. With in this picture, the older ones are actually the ones at the bottom of the picture. And obviously it's not every single card of his, but you can see in the foreground his Topps cards and I think 1 year of a Fleer card and so on. So that was cool to see. I have a lot of those cards. These were all graded, usually fairly highly graded, 8 or 9 or so. So that was fun to look at. There's a lot of paperwork, memorabilia here. I think a lot of it's on loan from the Clemente family. This is an interesting one. There was a meat company in Pittsburgh called Conn's. They made hot dogs and other things. And this is his contract signed in 1965 to be solely dedicated to promoting cons in terms of advertising meat or meat products. And for that contract, he got $150. And so there's a lot of correspondence like this on the walls, particularly on the first floor of the museum. Another interesting piece of correspondence is from 1956. This is from Branch Rickey, the general manager, sending a letter to Roberto Clemente, basically setting the stage for contract negotiations and, quite frankly, setting the stage to not pay him as much money as Clemente might have wanted. And there's a few examples of this correspondence here, but I pointed it out because, arguably Branch Rickey was an early adopter of analytics or sabermetrics. And so in this letter, he describes this metric where the numerator is plate appearances, defined as at-bats plus walks plus hits batsmen, divided by total bases plus walks plus hit by pitch. So why the at-bats or plate appearances were in the numerator and not the denominator, I don't know. But in any event, he was using this formula that he called earned bases and using that as a measure of offensive production. And it's reminiscent of the moneyball era, where there is some value to getting on base in addition to regular hits and slugging. Probably the closest thing to this metric today is OPS, which is on base percentage plus slugging percentage, but it's not exactly the same thing. But it's interesting that all the way back in 1956, that was the premise for his contract negotiations. You'll find in the museum a lot of game-used items. These are a couple examples. Here's home plate from the 1971 World Series, some Clemente cleats, a bat, looks like an autographed baseball, and on the right, some cleats from 1972. So that's pretty cool. Obviously, there's a lot of highlights of key moments in Clemente's career. Some of them being his 3,000th hit, which was his last regular season hit of his career in 1972. He was elected to the Hall of Fame the summer after his death. There's also obviously a lot of commemoration of his World Series appearances, especially 1971. And there's even an interactive video display of various elements of his career. Obviously, there are, commemoration of his two World Series victories in 60 and 71. He was the MVP of the 1971 World Series. And you get a little bit of a view of the first floor of the museum in the background here. There's a lot of photographs hanging on the walls of Clemente in various situations and poses and so on, some of which I've seen before and some I had not. But there's a lot of those. Those are cool. There's also a lot of what you would call ephemera, which would be like World Series tickets and other schedules and programs and stuff that you'll find on display. When Three River Stadium opened in 1970, it had a nice modern scoreboard, and it had a big sign for Gulf Oil on the left and a sign for Mellon Bank on the right. At the time, Gulf Oil was one of the big corporations in Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh was well known for being a large corporate headquarters city. Westinghouse was there, U.S. Steel was there, Mellon Bank was there. Draveau Corporation was there until it went bankrupt. Rockwell International was there, who I eventually went to work for. And so, anyways, golf had a big sign on the left side of the scoreboard, and in the museum you can see the actual golf sign hanging on the wall, which is pretty cool. Upstairs, there was a display that showed this suit that Roberto Clemente was wearing. You kind of can see it in the background. He's sitting with, I think, Bob Prince, the Pirates announcer. It's interesting. The thing says it was donated by Franco Harris, which is very cool. He had this suit in 1971, 1972 era, and the word is that he actually wore it to the All-Star game. So in 2018, Javi Baez wore the same jacket, the exact same jacket, when he was at the All-Star game. I think during the home run derby, he didn't hit home runs wearing it, but he was interviewed by the media wearing this jacket, and obviously Javi Baez was proud to be wearing Clemente's jacket. So that's a cool item. They had examples of various stadium seating in the museum. The one in the middle is supposedly one of the original Forbes Field seats from the early 1900s. And then some more quote unquote modern Forbes Field seats on the right. I've seen a few of those at memorabilia shows. So that's a nice example. And then Three River Stadium seats on the left. There were three different colors: yellow, orange, and red. I actually have a pair of red seats on my porch, but that's what they look like. It's not all pirate stuff. It's not all Clemente stuff. So this was pretty cool. They actually had the pitching rubber from when Bob Gibson threw a no-hitter in August of 1971 against the Pirates. I don't know how often a World Series champion has been no-hit in the regular season, but this is one example. So that was kind of cool to see. There are also some stuff upstairs in the museum dedicated to the Steelers and the Penguins. And then there's a small room that's kind of dedicated to Major League Baseball players who have visited the museum, which is not uncommon to happen when teams are in town. So we finished up with the museum, and I asked my friend if he'd be willing to help me check off another bucket list item. And the sandwich place is called Primanti Brothers. It's been in business since 1933. It's a few blocks closer to downtown. It's 21 blocks east of downtown. And it's in an area that was a warehouse district. It's called the Strip District. And the word is that these truckers would come in with their produce and whatnot, fish and so on, and they would want something to eat. And so they would go to the sandwich place, and for efficiency, they would just put everything on the sandwich: French fries, coleslaw, the meat, tomatoes, and then that was the sandwich. So I've always wanted to go there. I never went there for the 16 years I lived in Pittsburgh proper. So we went, and you can see a picture of my sandwich on the lower right. I got the traditional sandwich, which is at the top of the menu here. It's called the Pittsburgher and cheese. It's basically a cheesesteak type meat. It didn't have any cheese on it that I could tell. If there wasn't much. I will have to say I was quite unimpressed with the sandwich. I would probably go back, but I'd probably get something else. My friend got a ham and cheese, and he seemed to like that. Of course, I had the obligatory Heinz ketchup there to go with the French fries. So afterwards, we took a walk around the area. It's become a little touristy compared to when I lived there. You can see the tall buildings from downtown Pittsburgh in the rear of this picture. I worked in a couple of those buildings during the time I was in Pittsburgh. The tallest one there was U.S. Steel's headquarters. It was also where Rockwell's headquarters was for a time. I think that building's 62 stories high, 62 stories high. It's triangular shaped. And so I did buy some memorabilia. I bought a T-shirt at the Clemente Museum, and I bought this T-shirt, which is in honor of a local beer, which back in the 70s was the main sponsor of the Pirates radio and TV broadcasts. So all in all, a good day. On my way out of town, I actually drove west toward downtown and through downtown. So it was a little nostalgic to drive literally right past the buildings that I worked in. But soon I was on the freeway heading east back to Virginia. Now I did drive within 5 minutes of the original Forbes Field location. I did not stop. In this case, I've been there before. I'd like to go back again to Pittsburgh as a tourist and spend a little bit more time. But it was a great day. It was a great visit, and I hope you enjoyed this. With that, I think we're done.